Hello.
Hi. I am Ryette.
And I'm Nicola. And
Fromance. I said that so like Afrikaans sounding. Fromance.
Fromance. Hello. And welcome to
Hi.
Fromance.
Hi.
It's Nicola and Ryette talking over each other and being unprepared and just, talking shit, right?
Well, I mean, let's be clear that you did say that you're going to start, and then I still just did stuff, even though I should have just been quiet.
Well, I mean, I love it because normally that's me. Like in episode 1, I was like, yeah, I never like speak over people. And you're like, yeah, Nicola, that's never happened ever in our relationship. And I was like,
Yeah, we'll like be finishing each other's sentences soon. I'm thinking again about how funny it is because the last episode that we released, my hair was pink, and then one of the other ones later, my hair was so long and then like brown, and now my hair's like it's just the continuity is gonna be beautiful. I just look like a different host every time. In every thumbnail, it looks like you're with a different person, but it's just me. I'm just shapeshifting.
I mean, we're growing and changing every day anyway. Your hair might as well represent that.
Exactly, and sometimes we do the opposite of growing, so that also is represented by my hair.
Is that why your hair is shorter now? Okay, cool. Got you.
Yeah, I definitely did not decide last Thursday morning at 3 a.m., Friday morning at 3 a.m. that I want to cut my hair, and then booked an appointment immediately on Naver, which is like Korean Google, and went and got my hair cut at 11 a.m. that day. Definitely that didn't happen.
It seems spot on. I mean, I sat in a parking lot in the middle of nowhere, Eastern Cape, having wanted to shave my hair for like a decade, and then just walked into this shopping center that like it's like this tiny little town, and I was like, yo, will you shave my hair? And they were just like,
What?
Yeah. So I mean, impulse decisions are great.
I've always wanted to shave my hair, and I've never done it, and I'm gonna do it. I just
come back to Cape Town.
Yeah, not when I'm here. We'll do a special video where Nicola shaves my head.
And then you can shave mine in the next one.
Hell yeah. Fresh start.
Okay, so we're not actually here to talk about impulse decisions. We're actually here to talk about well thought out decisions and very adult stuff.
I was about to say that.
You see, we're already reading each other's minds to talk about the election that's coming up on the 29th of May. So Ryette's got some facts for us to start out with. Then we're just going to talk about the ballots. We're going to have some conversations about like things that we've read and impressions that we've got. And yeah, I just want to say to keep in mind that there is no way that we can all know all things about all people, and this is just the little tidbits that we found along the way that have kind of helped us to form our opinion going forward, and we're probably just as confused as the rest of you.
Yeah. So I guess for me the most important thing that I'm going to say right now is hopefully you still have time to check, especially if you're into like living abroad. Make sure you check online. Usually the embassy's website will tell you where you can vote. Like here in Korea, we're voting the 25th, which is next Saturday.
All right, stop, collaborate, and listen.
Hello, this is future Ryette right now. It is the day after recording the episode you're currently watching, and in the episode, I say like the dates for like voting abroad, voting in Korea, blah 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 blah, and with those, by saying that in my brain, I thought those dates, I thought it was the 18th, but at the same time, I also thought it was the 25th, which is what I said, because I thought it was next weekend, but I don't know what happened. I pulled a, like, time hijinks on myself. And so basically, I woke up this morning and went online and realized, oh my god, I have to vote, like, today. So I come to you now, post-vote. Here's my thingy. Not really to say anything, or the only things that I do have to say, and I feel like the last time I voted when I was abroad, like here in Korea, it was so long ago that I can't even remember the details or anything. But we were talking about which provincial people we would get to vote for, and obviously, living abroad, you don't really get to vote, or you don't register in a province because you don't live in South Africa. And so obviously it's just like voting for a national candidate. And the ballot was way longer than I've ever seen it. But yeah, if I can get up in the morning and realize, holy shit, I was wrong, I have to go vote right now, and get ready, travel an hour and a half, go vote, and travel an hour and a half back, you can do it too. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to say in this episode you're watching is going to be so very, very fucking wrong, because I think I was delusional. I think I had a lobotomy the week before it lobotomized me and did something to my brain, like fully mind swapped me. But yeah, so don't pay attention to the incorrect things. Important thing is people abroad voted today. So many South Africans voted today here in Korea and all over the world that I saw. And yeah, hopefully by the time this rolls around back home, you guys are informed and confident and comfortable to vote for someone that you feel you can trust with our country. Yeah, so from future Ryette, I say to you, good luck and goodbye. Basically, when we go to vote, every person is going to receive 3 ballots. I'm not going to go into detail on the ballots. Nicola's the expert. I'm the unexpert. So I'm just shortly going to say, the blue one is the national compensatory ballot. Don't know what that means. I'm waiting for Nicola to tell me. Orange is the regional ballot and pink is the provincial legislature ballot.
So I think like the main things that I want to cover is like why there's a change and what each one means, because maybe you don't want to vote the same across the board, and also because with the new introduction of individual candidates who are not affiliated with the party, that they're not on like the national ballot, for example. So you won't be able to vote. If you wanted to vote for that person, you won't be able to vote for them across the board. But you might find value in like, okay, I think this party is maybe strongest at a national level, but I'd really like this party to be working well for me in my region or whatever. So the reason for the change, the reason for the introduction of like another ballot is because of this introduction of individual candidates. They wanted to find a way for individual candidates to be part of the National Assembly if they got enough votes from like a regional perspective or a provincial perspective without kind of throwing things out. And this was the solution to that. So that's why there are 3 ballots now. So basically like a quick overview, in the National Assembly, you've got 200 seats. And I'm actually going to put a visual up for this. So there's 200 seats that you're voting for on your blue national compensatory ballot, the blue one.
Compensatory? I don't know. I don't know.
Where does the emphasis go? So for the national ballot, the blue one, that is only political parties. There's no individual candidates on that ballot, and that is for the 200 in National Assembly. Then there's another 200 seats in the National Assembly, and that is for like regional or provincial representation, right? And that is then what your orange ballot is for.
So that's like choosing is that the premier?
So in my understanding, so when it comes to the pink one, which is your provincial legislature, that in my understanding is the premier. So again, like I am open to correction, but that's the way that I'm understanding it. So these people who get voted on the orange ballot, who are candidates, individual candidates and parties on that ballot, the ballot will look different in each province. They can fill those other 200 seats and represent your province in the National Assembly. So you've got your national ballot with 200 seats and your national regional ballot, which is the other 200 seats. And those seats are broken up according to how many registered voters are in each province. So, for example, I think Gauteng has the most seats represented in those 200 seats, and Northern Cape or something like that has the least amounts, just based on number of registered voters in those areas.
Gotcha.
Comes to the provincial legislature ballot, that is the pink one. Also different in every place because it is provincial, but these are not people that are necessarily going to be representing you in the National Assembly. They are part of, like, they run your province. And I didn't realize that this was kind of a thing, because we've spoken a little bit about like the DA, or not the DA, sorry, the Western Cape and parties who want to like Cape exit and all of this kind of stuff. But each province can actually have like a constitution of its own and like laws that govern it as a province that are different than other provinces.
Right. It's like municipal things.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that guide it, and like our constitution is one of them. So you can't just go rogue and start creating some batshit crazy laws and constitutions for your province because you feel like it. There's a lot that guides it. But that one, the pink ballot, is voting for those people, which also you can vote for individual candidates and you can vote for parties. And then those provincial legislature, like the people who sit there, I think there's like minimum of 30 people in some provinces and like maximum of maybe 80 in other provinces. So that varies. So just like kind of a quick summary is like the blue is your main national like president and National Assembly people, 200 seats. Then you've got 200 seats that are going to be people who represent your province in the National Assembly. And then the pink ballot, which is provincial, that is your kind of local government.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Questions from you, Ryette? Yeah, like, because what comes to mind?
Well, yeah, because I didn't at all look into this. I read about like the 3 ballots, but I didn't go into detail at all. I guess then, because I can't remember when I registered. I guess I registered under the province that I last lived in, or I don't know where I registered as. So, because that would determine which ballot I get.
You might want to look where you are registered, because I think, for example, like, especially from a regional perspective or a provincial perspective, on a national level, I'd be like, this is what I think countrywide. But certain provinces have very different needs from other provinces, and it might be worth knowing where you are registered in order to decide how you would want to use your vote most effectively for that area.
So that's what I'm like, I should have thought about this, because obviously, even though I lived in Gauteng last before moving to Korea, I spent most of my life in the Western Cape, and I would return to the Western Cape, right? So like, or like most likely. So that's probably where I feel like my vote would be, like I would prefer my vote to go.
Yeah, but it's where your address is registered.
Yeah, I don't know when my address is registered, because I haven't been in South Africa in such a long time.
So that's also something, like, even if you are in South Africa, worth looking into, because if you move and you just haven't changed your childhood, like, address, like, say you registered before you left home, and and it doesn't even have to be as dramatic as you're in the Western Cape and you're meant to be voting in the Eastern Cape. But we all have assigned places that we have to go and vote. And even if it's like in another suburb, if you haven't changed your address, you would need to go there to vote.
I don't know. I feel like I'm even like too, I want to say shy, but too embarrassed kind of to say this, but I'm such a like, I feel like for most of my life, such an uneducated voter. Like I never thought about it as much as I should have. Because like it was just not something that was really spoken about in my house when I was growing up. So like I think we said this before. I really only got into politics much later, and like reading about stuff and caring about stuff. And yeah, so like a lot of things I don't even know the details of, like by heart, you know?
Yeah, but the thing is, though, that a lot of people would choose not to vote in those situations. And so just know that, like, there's a lot of uneducated voters going to vote. So if you registered, please, and you know, like, something about something, please just vote.
Yeah, but also please read something, because don't vote for example, the DA because your family has voted for the DA for like 20 years. Don't just do that. Don't vote on a trend. Don't vote on a habit. Don't do that, because this is the year where I think voter registration will probably be higher comparatively, like compared to previous years, because I feel like more younger people are being motivated, or like are motivated to vote because of like the state of our country and like the decisions that people keep making that like directly impact everyone.
Yeah. And I mean, 30 years is kind of like a milestone since our first democratic election, but I don't think it's just that number that is making this election feel so like important. It is the space that people are in. It is the generation that is now at a certain age where they're feeling like,
what the fuck? Yeah.
So yeah, like I hope that the registration numbers are high, and I hope that the percentage of people who are registered and who vote, like I hope that is also high.
I do have to say that I think younger generations, and like, I mean, like our age and even younger, maybe a little bit older sometimes, I don't know. They really are more informed, I think, about a lot of political things than I would say I was. And they're more involved in it as well, because, you know, for us, we got the internet kind of later in our lives. So we started seeing like all of these things in real time at a later age. And that's when people were only like not sharing all of the terrible things immediately, right? So next generations are growing up seeing all of these horrible things unfold in real time, seeing the collapse of like modern society, this like late stage capitalist fucking world that we're living in, right? So they are more radicalized, or not even radicalized, but like they're more willing to fight for change, which is what we fucking need right now. Like, if you don't want to give up your little comfortable whatever to fight for change, then that's stupid. I mean, that's your prerogative, but like, this is not the time for that. You know, this is not the time to like be silent and quiet about things. This is the time where like we've seen some fucking terrible shit happen over the past 6 months. I mean, longer than that, but like very, very extremely focused on like Palestine. And I know especially like the Western Cape. And I think that's going to be, I think that's like really one of the biggest driving like forces behind like motivating people to vote.
But also, I think worldwide, because obviously it's a voting year in the US as well, as we've said. But like, I don't know that these parallels are necessarily being drawn. I know when South Africa took Israel to the ICJ, for example, we were like, yes, this makes perfect sense because we come from an apartheid history, for example. But I don't know necessarily that people have made the link as to like, oh, look what is going on there. Hey, remember that actually happened in our past. And like 30 years ago, it was meant to be all this change. And we're still like struggling. And that's what, speaking from my perspective, is just like the things that were, the promises that were made, they have not been followed through on for those who kind of need it the most. And I think like 30 years is enough of being lied to.
I think so. I watched the 3. I think there were only 3, unless I like accidentally skipped 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. But they had the like IOL, the YouTube channel had they had like panel discussions for the candidates for like in Cape Town. They did it against the Western Cape ones. They had a Johannesburg one for Gauteng, and then they had a KZN one as well.
Sorry, Ryette, were these with the candidates like in general, like as in if we won the majority, this would be our presidential candidate, or was it like regional specific, as in like this would be our premier?
This is regional specific.
Okay.
I'm not sure if each panelist was the premier candidate as well for that party, but I think for the most part it was.
Okay.
Like general consensus, most of the parties were super critical, obviously, of the ANC, and like basically just saying, you know, we have to get the ANC out because they've promised and promised and promised and haven't delivered anything. So that was like one of the biggest things. And then even more than that, the Western Cape one, the Cape Town one, the heat that the DA took was insane.
Nice.
Not undeserved.
No, I'm surprised.
I have to say, out of all of the ones that I watched, the one that I rewatched completely because of how interesting it was the Cape Town one, because the audience was so like passionately involved and like angry, and like you could feel that they wanted change. Like they are like hungry for it. And even, you know, the other panelists, like for example, Fadil Adams from the NCC, he was super critical of the DA, especially him and the guy from the AM4C. And they were just like openly calling the DA Zionists. Like they called them like the Democratic Apartheid Party. Like they were like, oh, we're renaming you because this is what you're called.
How did they respond to that out of interest? Because that's also like very telltale.
They didn't. The guy, it was Alan Wendy, I think, and I don't know if it's Wendy or Wendy. I don't know because I just listened to it. I didn't really, but he didn't really give a direct response about anything. He would just like take other random things and kind of deflect it. The thing that really stood out to me from the Cape Town one was how passionate the people who were listening or like in the audience were about like especially issues related to Israel and Palestine. One of the people when they could ask questions, he asked each party about their stance on it. A lot of them were like obviously support Palestine, but then a lot of them were very vague about it. And then when it came to Action SA women, I can't remember what her name was, she wouldn't even call it a genocide. And the way that she was talking about it like really, really vaguely, she the audience members started like literally shouting at her. They were like, call it a genocide, just call it what it is, say genocide, why can't you say genocide? She also kind of just like powered through it and just kept going and didn't really say anything.
I know it might seem like it's not relevant to us, but it is for me indicative of how you deal with people suffering. I'm not saying that in the correct way, but like, because there's a lot of suffering in South Africa, obviously not to that scale, but it's like, are you so removed or detached or cut off? You know, I do think that this has kind of, the genocide has kind of shown that. And so even though it is important to know their stance and, you know, how they communicate about it for its own reasons, it is also important from a voter's perspective in South Africa, because there's so many people suffering, and you need to know that who you vote for, they see that, they care about that, and they want to take action against it.
Right. And I think that's why the panel discussions were so interesting, because you could see who was really passionate about which things, and like which issues were important in which areas. Like I feel like in the Western Cape, it was really focused on Israel and Palestine, and really focused on like the DA, like empty promises, being Zionist, blah, 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 blah. So I actually pulled up the thing, the one guy, like the way that they even talked to the DA guy. He was like, I just have a quick rebuttal for the premier of all things Zionist and illegitimate, which was such a good line.
They came prepared.
Absolutely prepared, and I did not give one single fuck. It's really interesting. And like in Johannesburg, a lot of the discussion was about like illegal immigrants, stuff like that. And that was like something that a lot of the parties, I think it was like the IFP maybe, like they were like, get all of the immigrants out of here, basically.
Yeah.
And then in KZN, it was a lot of like damages by flooding and like the water problem, and things like that. So it was like there are very different things to deal with in each place.
Yeah, I mean, we can say there's like load shedding is a national problem. Everyone knows that. But then each province obviously has like these specific things that need dealing with or that have happened quite recently. For example, there's been big issues obviously in Durban over the last couple of years. So those are things that are front of mind.
Yeah. And another thing that was brought up actually everywhere, one was that a lot of the candidates and a lot of the people like who are being considered for premier or like president or whatever, they're all like, they're so old, like they're like over 60, or like they're just like, how do you expect the new generation or like younger generations to try to want change and vote for something, but the older people are like stuck in their ways. And then the other one was how they approach having like women in their party, like the women in leadership roles.
I can't believe, I mean, like, I just still a discussion, like,
well, so a lot of the people who asked were audience members who were women, asking about like, because I think on almost every single panel, like Quizzel had one woman and there were like 8 men, I think.
Because I'm thinking about all our posters here, and I'm like, if I've seen a woman, it's a lot. And I think that they were one of the faces of a party, not necessarily the face of.
Right. And I think some of the parties played it really smart. Like they sent to the Western Cape one, I'm pretty sure, I'm just gonna say it, I don't care, they sent a white ANC guy.
Fair enough. They were like, don't be scared of us, we also have got your back.
Right. So I think like they're just trying to also appeal to like, you know, the Cape Town rich white people. I think they played it clever. Like a lot of the Cape Town ones had women, the Joburg ones had women, but yeah, KZN had one woman. Yeah, it was really interesting.
Can I ask, and this is obviously just from your point of view, like I know you're quite an analytical person and you're quite like objective, but it is still your perspective. In each province, which parties do you think like represented themselves the best, regardless of their track record or like whatever, who's involved in their funding and who's their leader and what, like who really seemed to stand up well in these conversations?
Oh, that's such a hard question. I think that initially I thought that initially I thought Action SA was doing well. The lady is just really just very easy to listen to, like really well-spoken person. But when it came to the Israel-Palestine question, I was like, that's an immediate no for me. But I actually think like the two people that said the best things for the Western Cape were the NCC, which is the premier candidate is like Fadil Adams, and the NCC is the National Colored Congress. So like it's really like by colored people for colored people, like really focusing on that, which I think is a really important thing in Cape Town. Well, like not Cape Town, just Cape Town, but like Western Cape, I feel like.
Yeah, and that's also the thing when we speak about the different ballots, like you might not, like I'm not sure if the NCC, for example, is on the national ballot, but like if they were.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but if they were, for example, it might not be a party that you want to vote for nationally, but you might want to vote for them on both of your other ballots. Like it's a really good example of that because obviously there's a large population, colored population in the Western Cape who are, I mean, here they say voice of the voiceless. So they obviously feel that kind of way and want to change that?
I feel like there's always in politics especially, it's always like the DA, so the white representatives, and then or like the representative of the white people. And I mean, obviously no one claims this is just me saying that from my perspective, right? And then the ANC is like kind of the representative of the black people, and who represents the color people or the like anyone else, you know?
And the DA really thrives on that in the Western Cape because they've kind of taken up that market. Whereas now it's like, it's because there isn't an option that I felt aligned with me, maybe you would say as a colored person. Maybe now they're like, well, there is.
Yeah, so the NCC and then the AM4C did really well as well. They were both really just like very passionate about, like, you just feel that all politicians suck, right? But these people, like these guys, they didn't feel like career politicians where they're like trying to just gain power or something. It's people who are trying to make a difference in the community. And I think that they are both really good candidates for the Western Cape. Oh, the guy from the AM4C, and I didn't write down his name, but he was so good. He said like, the tentacles of Zionism is in the DA.
Damn.
So everyone just like fully, at one point the crowd was also shouting like the DA guy, like, you're a liar, why are you lying? So he was trying to respond to something, and this one guy in the front row was just like shouting that he's a liar, and like, why do they give him time to speak? Because he's just like giving him more time to lie. He's been lying for this many years, blah, 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 blah. And then the Alan Windey, the DA premier guy, he was like, like he just like gave his mic to the guy. And because he was like, here, then you take it. And so the guy just started talking, and then the moderator was like, no, sit down, like he has to take his time.
I just want to say AM4C, because they're not someone that I'm familiar with. They're the Allied Movement for Change.
Sorry.
Just as an FYI, because I wasn't familiar with them. And I do see that they also like have traction in other provinces, which is cool.
Yeah, I think they're a pretty good option. And then honestly, a party that like across the board gave really good answers that, like, we know where my political compass leans towards. So a party, and every single person on every single one of these panels from the EFF did a great fucking job. Just really good.
I think so. There was an article, and I have it pulled up here because it speaks, about the failings of the three kind of main parties, and why this particular man feels that the way he wants to go is towards the small parties, like we discussed last time, strategic voting for people who you align with, and hopefully a coalition government of a lot of smaller parties who want to see change. Because I know we'll speak about the the MPCSA. But outside of that, this guy was also talking about keeping the DA out of power. So ANC, EFF, and DA. And, he was saying about the ANC, obviously they've had all these opportunities to disappoint because they've been in power, which other parties, they have a lot of opportunities to speak, but we don't get to see what they're capable of. The DA has not, he was saying, been in the spirit of transformation that South Africa desperately has needed since 1994, and that has been very, very clear. I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons that Musi left the party as well, and he was like their poster child. And then what he was saying about the EFF is that they, like, on a core level, like you said, their values very much align with you and their like manifesto and everything like that, but they almost like have just become a disruptive presence. Like, they're not actually so maybe they've taken that kind of talk on board, and they're like, okay, we need to, like, yes, we've done what we need to do, and we will continue to disrupt where we need to, but we are an intelligent party. We do take things seriously. We need to show that we are competent and capable of doing more than just disruption tactics. So that's actually really like cool to hear, because I like Julius Malema, like, he's not an idiot. He is a really smart man.
No, he's so smart. The thing is, though, people were very critical of Julius Malema. So the individuals on the panels they gave really good answers, and I feel like it really resonated with me, like the way that they would approach things. Then other people were like, yeah, well, you guys say this, but then Malema goes and like says something that's the opposite, or does something that's the opposite of what you're saying. So it's also like going off of, briefly just bringing like I don't know if you wanted to talk about this later, but like the quiz thing that we did earlier, right? Like, so then my result was like the ANC, which I obviously, with their actions, nothing aligns with what they're doing, but I guess based on just like the principles, so like their manifesto or whatever, it does make sense to some degree, right? So I think that's also the difficult part.
We will post that because I mean, and I will also type something up about why it's like it's a cool quiz, but it's also kind of has its problems. And one of them is like, ideally, yes, I would want this to be a government entity, but do I trust the government with this, for example? And it's the same with like the manifestos. Like, yes, in theory, I align with this, but I also know the history and the leadership and what they have done. And so, yeah, I get it.
And like, I remember years ago, I took a quiz like that as well. And my answer was EFF. And then obviously I didn't end up voting for the EFF because I don't know, I feel like there's also a lot of like fear mongering, and they do lean into the very, very radically pro land reformation, like without compensation, or like, you know, land back without compensation. So, but then like take it to a degree where, like, as you said, it just becomes this like disruptive kind of force instead of like an organized thing.
And like, they're not wrong, but the thing is, like, you also have to think about practicalities.
An interesting thing that came across in the Johannesburg one, I think, they asked about provinces, like keeping provinces, and the EFF wants to abolish it. Then there's more money to be like instead of like giving each municipality a certain amount of money, if you can spread it more evenly across the population. I haven't read more into that policy, but that's just like based on what she said in that panel. So that's something that I would definitely go and read about more, and I should have, but I didn't. So you guys go do it.
Yeah, if that's something of interest to you, like, go and have a look at it, because borders in general, like, it's an interesting topic, but like, we can't,
Right.
You can't know everything about everything, even if you spent your
Right.
life reading.
So also border related, I did say earlier it was the IFP that were really strictly against immigration in Joburg, and it wasn't the IFP, it was the PA, the Patriotic Alliance.
Okay.
The Patriotic Alliance's Johannesburg Gauteng premier option is none other than Kenny Kunene. He was like an entertainer, and then I think he went to prison for fraud or something, and then now he's out and he's like gotten into politics, and now he's the guy.
Having a performer as a politician is the most like apt thing, like a career politician, because that's what it is.
Let me tell you, it would be funny if it happened once, but not once, because on the KZN one, I can't remember what the party was, because this man came up and he was like, I'm not a career politician, I'm actually a stand-up comedian, and then I just feel like someone needs to say these things. So I think he's like a one-man party. I didn't like, as far as paying attention goes, I paid the least attention to the KZN one. I'm sorry. I also did that one last, and that's why. But it was just, and he was wearing sunglasses the whole time.
To be fair, I know a comedian who did consider going into politics, and he was very community orientated. And so it's not like if you're a comedian, or a performer, you're just taking the piss. But like, that is kind of funny that there were two, not one, but two.
And in two different provinces.
Oh my goodness.
I'm trying to see who it was, but I can't remember his name. Oh, he's an independent candidate.
Okay.
His name, I don't know. He's an Indian guy. His name, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like Sagren. Sagren. I don't know. I'm so sorry. Moodley. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's him. And then at the end, when they were asking about like, why didn't you choose a woman to represent your party if you feel like women are so important in your party, and everyone answered, and then he was like, well, next time I reserve the right to identify as a woman, and everyone was like, ha 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 ha. I was like, okay, bye.
Yeah, don't love that. But what I will say is that, one, as a comedian, if he chose that as his career path, he's obviously not aiming to be rich in South Africa. So he would not be chasing your money. And two, as a comedian, they don't even write their own material anymore. The politicians write it for them. So he's pretty much a politician anyway.
That's true.
I'm going to hop into the MPCSA.
Before you move on to that, let me just quickly wrap up. I have like just a few like final things about the panels. So one of the things that one of the ANC members, a quote that one of them said, I wrote it down because it was hilarious. They said, this was like their closing statement, I think. They were like, a vote for the ANC means expansion of all the services that have extended to South Africans everywhere.
0 times 0 equals.
And then I wrote down like the audiences in like KZN and Gauteng were like way more, I wrote down respectful, and I think that's the right word. And they were like more like reserved and like professional in their questions and their like answers and their like statements or opinions and stuff. But the Cape Town ones were so impressive and like passionate about what's happening in their community. And there was a lady in the audience as well who was talking about like the Queen's people and like why is no one talking about them, and like why is no one standing up for them. And so that was really, I think, poignant and interesting. I don't know. Do your research before you vote for someone, because, you know, see who is in cahoots, see who is being funded. And I know you'll get into that in a second, and just know where your vote is going in the end, because, you know, shit can get weird. And like, there's nothing wrong with, like, I know we've been taught to like just vote for one of the big parties so that the other big party doesn't win, but like, don't vote like that anymore. Vote for smaller parties. Let smaller parties get more votes, because that's the only fucking way we're going to change something. Otherwise, we're going to end up exactly like the USA with like fucking 2 options, and then, which is basically what has been happening. And we put ourselves in that position because we have other options, but we're just not like uniting and vote. You know what I'm saying? It's anyway, you go.
I shall. I will also say, like, from the like Cape Town people being so vocal about a lot of things and so passionate, I think it's because also, if you're going to stand up as the DA has been and like saying Cape Town's amazing, Cape Town's the best, save Cape Town. Everyone's like, save Cape Town. And I think people are like, are you what? Like, things are not okay here. So I think that's also why people were really vocal, and I'm glad that they were.
They 100% said like, the best for who? They said that. They were like, okay, you keep saying Cape Town is the best, but the best for who? Who are you talking about? You're talking about the rich white people, and that's it.
In terms of being in cahoots, one thing I will say that I'd read online is like, in terms of the EFF, so, you know, everyone wants now the ANC out, but the EFF is apparently like not very loyal in terms of like who they would get in bed with if they needed to form a coalition government, which, as we discussed last time, is kind of a slap in the face to the people who supported you, because the EFF seems willing to jump into bed with either the ANC or the DA, which is wild in my mind, because that would just make no sense whatsoever. But what was interesting to me is this the multi-party charter for South Africa, and what was most interesting about it is that, like, I got sent this thing about it and who's in it and the agreements and everything, like this contract between these parties to form this coalition, pool their votes, and, you know, their main aim is to get the ANC out and to keep the EFF out. Okay. But alongside it came this research of how many people know about because it was like, one of the things planned was like, everyone needs to know about the MPCSA. And this independent research company went and like, was like, hey, does anyone know about this? And everyone was like, never heard of it. So that marketing campaign didn't go very well. And then in terms of what people thought, so they were like, okay, you don't know about it. This is what it is. Do you think it will go well, yay or nay? Like, in a number of different questions, kind of asking that question. And it was literally almost like a 49-51% split between like, it's going to go horrible or it's going to go great. And I was like, wow, that is unhinged. But so in terms of voting like smaller parties, it is worthwhile knowing who has arrangements or agreements with other parties. So, for example, Action SA was definitely on my radar pre this conversation, but also pre me looking at this MPCSA document. But, you know, so the people who are part of this are the DA, the IFP, which is the Inkatha Freedom Party, the VF Plus, Action SA, United Independent Movement, Spectrum National Party, Independent South African National Civic Organization. So some parties the DA is obviously really big, some parties that I've honestly never heard of. But then my thing is like, okay, cool, if I decided to vote for Action SA, I don't believe that they're going to win the election. But then what's going to happen is essentially their votes are all going to be pooled.
Sit with the DA.
Exactly. So that's really important to know. So look up the multi-party charter for South Africa. And also, I mean, it's not a long document, but just like, it's very much like, you know, whoever has the most votes is still going to be getting the most kind of power. And yes, they're going to try and make it as representative of the country as possible. But, you know, they reserve the right. And, you know, if there's a unanimous agreement, they can dissolve this agreement. And I'm just like, you know what, like, it's all just a little bit flaky. But yeah, for me, that kind of like took Action SA out of it for me. And also in their agreements, like, it felt very much, and I understand the need to keep the people with money happy, but there was like a lot of idealistic stuff that they had listed that they want to work on. But they did also then make a lot of effort to say that they want to support the free market economy. And I was like, yeah, cool. But like, that's just keeping the status quo. So like, you can have all these other things, but you literally don't ever want to say anything like anti-capitalist, or else people are just like, that party's just going to ruin everything. And that is just not the research, one, and just not the case.
Yeah.
But they made it very clear that they are going to protect the free market economy.
Of course, because it protects them.
Exactly. And who donates to them, which kind of feeds into the next thing.
Exactly.
Which is funding. Okay. So we were a bit like worried about the funding for Rise Mzansi, because that's kind of like who we were thinking about before and who I'd seen a lot of like, they've been very visible, which obviously indicates that they had funding to be visible. So in terms of funding for the first 2 quarters of the 2023-2024 like financial year, more than half of it, these donations went to the DA. Then about 20% of those donations went to the ANC. Interestingly enough, Action SA, that isn't represented in Parliament at all as yet, received about 19% of those donations, which, as I said, then kind of just means to me that the DA got like 70% of those donations. So those are donations from like companies or individuals or whatever. But this is something that I didn't know, and sorry, but this was just something I didn't know, that if you're not like a represented party in Parliament or whatever, like I didn't know that if you are one of those represented parties, you get taxpayer funding. That's wild to me. Way to keep the powerful in power. So yes, all these smaller parties, not only are they like struggling like to get traction in other ways, but like the big parties are just, you know, using they have access to taxpayer money for marketing themselves further. I wanted to talk quickly about a guy called Martin Moshal. I'm not sure how to pronounce it either. Moshal, who there was some hoo-ha about because he has contributed quite a lot from an individual donation perspective. He's contributed quite a lot to this election. So it's almost like you feel like maybe this person has a bit of control over the outcome because of how much they're putting into different parties. So from this man, I will say he's a billionaire. A lot of his money, he's a gambling mogul, made a lot of his money due to online gambling, like intellectual property, I think, or the technology behind it. Another thing being that he lives in Australia, which I don't love.
Wow.
I know. I did read some of what he had to say, and again, just words, but it was like, you know, he's made this money. He would like to put it back into making South Africa, like he would like to see it extended to benefiting the lives of millions of people. But the way that he has distributed his money, his prerogative, was 35 million to the DA, 20 million to Action SA. Remember, they are not at all in Parliament. So that's, in my mind, again, 55 million to the DA. And then surprisingly, he gave 4 million to Bossa, which is Musi Maimani's party. But I mean, you can also see the huge discrepancy there. So like, he's like, yeah, cool, but I'll just give you like a little bit. He's they say of this like individual funders, he's probably the largest funder. Like he's donated like a third of the funding that has gone into individual contributions prior to this election. And we were concerned about Rise SA. Rise and Fancy, sorry. And their money, they got a 15 million rand financial injection from the Oppenheimers. But also these are people so these very rich families, who every quarter they seem to just choose a party, because I think like the previous quarter they'd given 15 million to the DA, and now this time they'd given 15 million to Rise Mzansi. There was rumors of some American religious thing. If there was, it wasn't a substantial enough amount of money to top what the Oppenheimers gave, or one of the Oppenheimers, or it wasn't enough to even be declared. Because if it's under a certain amount, you also don't have to like declare it.
It's interesting that there's like multiple Oppenheimers donating to multiple parties, but it's like they split themselves into like different parties so that it's not like that sus, you know? Because like it's still Oppenheimer, but like the full name is like a different person. But they're probably like married or something. I didn't check that deep. I was just like, okay.
And as I say, like the amount of money for a non-represented party, like Action SA is getting it, man. And it's like,
Insane. Right. And that guy in Australia can go sit and like paint his beautiful words about giving back to the fucking community. But I'm sorry, I don't trust a single word out of a billionaire's mouth.
Yeah.
Fuck that guy and every single billionaire in the world. Bye. Yeah. You know, my big daddy Karl Marx would not approve. That's really why I always get like EFF, because they are a Marxist party. So that like theoretically makes sense for me.
By statements, they are. By leadership actions, maybe not so much. And also not all leadership, but...
That's exactly the case for like communism, right? Like it's not a bad system. It's a really good system in theory, but like the practice so far has generally not been great because of human greed.
But they also want to say that it's human nature, and that I don't believe. It's once you reach a certain level of power or influence or financial like gain, that's where the kind of corruption of the person comes in. I don't think that it's only like certain things are good on paper, just and you're like, well, as soon as people try and do it, it's gonna fuck out because humans suck. No, like I don't believe that.
But the problem is now that the US has started so many wars because of just the fact that communism existed, that probably made it worse.
Yeah.
And now no one can hear that word without like thinking, oh my God, evil. Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to say something else about the financials?
No, in terms of financials, that's all I really had to say. Those were just some relevant tidbits.
Tits.
And obviously to say that the bigger parties do have access to taxpayer money for, their campaigns. So they do have...
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, I just have some random like little facts to put out there before we wrap up. But yeah, Ryette.
For me, the things that I really look at, especially for this election, that I think, and we've talked about this, like I really care about the stance on like the Israel-Palestine. I really care about like what are their views on like the LGBTQIAs, the LGBTQIA plus community. And honestly, I went through and I read about each party's like opinion or like their stance on that. And the interesting thing is like a lot of them are just kind of like wishy-washy. Like, obviously like the ACDP, they were like, oh, they don't condone it, but they don't tolerate discrimination.
Because constitutionally you can't, like...
Right. And then like Al Jamaa were like, which is like, I'm pretty sure like a Muslim party, right? So they were like fully rejected. They were like, nope, thank you. But then a lot of the parties were just like very wishy-washy, and then a lot of them were like very supportive, and then like once again the EFF was like not only do they want to like combat discrimination, they also want to like put laws in place that like protects the people.
So like preventative measures, not just like, so getting to the root, which is with everything important.
Right. Like they want to pass laws to protect people from further discrimination. And then the one that really stood out for me was Rise and Zanzi, because not only did they talk about like reforming homophobia and everything, they also talked about tackling gender-based violence. And they were the only one in that part of their statement talking about gender-based violence, which I just remembered is another question people asked. And not all of the parties had great answers to that. One of the really standout parties that I can remember off the top of my head again was the NCC.
It so frustrates me because like the ANC is constantly, like I said last time, lip service. Like we must end GBV. Like it's such a thing. It's like, it's just become a buzzword. It's like, it's horrific. The rate at which femicide, like, and yes, gender-based violence ties very much into the LGBTQIA plus like, not issue, but like into what's going on in that community. So I'm glad that they like acknowledged that, but also spoke about GBV.
Yeah, because like that's such like, it's like one of the biggest problems in our country. And one of the parties as well, I wish I wrote this down, but they said as well, like that is the next apartheid in South Africa, is the gender-based violence and the femicide. And people need to think about it and talk about it more.
I mean, because that was it during COVID as well. We were all like,
right,
our real pandemic is...
Exactly. And then that again, the same NCC guy was like, the problem isn't, we can't solve the problem from like the outside, right? We have to go to the source of it and be like, why do these men not see these women as important enough? Like, why don't you make the connection of like, if you hurt this woman, you're hurting your mom, for example. These men don't think that they're good enough, so then they don't think that the women are good enough. So it was like a really insightful, again, just watch the Cape Town at least.
But that's a very, very community-based input. Like that's a really community like insight, because that is it. Like I strongly believe, for example, like coming from an NGO background, that the only way forward international development, no, but grassroots, because that guy is speaking about what he knows and has heard and sees, you know, whereas other people are speaking about it conceptually. It's not conceptual.
Right.
And it is preventable.
He said that to the lady who asked the question, he literally was like, we come from the same place. Like, I know where you're from. Like, we are from the place where this is happening. So I understand that. And so I'm saying, if you're voting provincially, NCC for Cape Town or NCC for Western Cape is a fucking good vote.
I'm so glad that you brought them to my attention, honestly.
You should go watch, especially the Cape Town one, because you know, reside in the Cape of the West. So it would be it's a really good thing to watch. And it's really like, it fires you up because you're like, oh fuck, these people are all so passionate and I'm so passionate, and it's people want this. Like, change is gonna happen whether the fucking stupid DA wants it or not. Like, sorry, you can't hold this fucking province hostage anymore. Goodbye. Get out of here.
For sure.
Oh, the only other overview kind of thing that I have to say, I talked to a bunch of people and I asked them random questions about, like, did they talk about voting growing up? Did they talk about politics in their homes? And honestly, for the most part, it seemed like a lot of people did, which was surprising to me because we did not have that experience. There's like different levels of like liberal of the people that I talk to, and the person that I probably respect the most out of everybody is a person who is they're really active in like, they're an activist, they're an artist, they're like just an amazing fucking person. And probably the most realistic view, because what they said is that they don't know if they're going to vote because the whole democratic process for them has failed so far, and they feel like voting doesn't even make a difference anymore. And it was interesting because I think out of everybody, they're the most involved in politics and like on the ground with people, whereas the other people that I talk to, it's more of like an hour perspective, like our version of politics. Also, this person is a little bit older, so they were like not a baby during apartheid.
It's interesting though, because when you think about it, I mean, I can only think about it from my perspective, and I can, you know, try and think about it from others, but I will never know for sure. But like when you have been failed time and time again, and you're working like less than minimum wage and you're struggling just to get by, I can imagine that after 30 years, you're like, what is the point of me wasting this day? Like, I have this day off if they're lucky enough to actually have the day off. And like, am I really going to go spend it standing in a line doing something that's going to make no difference whatsoever? Like, I get you.
Exactly.
I get you.
And it kind of it scared me a little, because I was like, if they don't believe in it.
Well, maybe we are the delusional ones, because we are we're sitting pretty, you know, and it's like idealistic. Whereas they just like the system as a whole doesn't work. And
which is true. The system doesn't work.
Yes. But it's all we have right now.
Right. And I think we might be at a point in the world where the only way that we're gonna get change to happen is by being a little bit delusional. Like, we're gonna have to pretend like we haven't been completely stripped of everything. Like, we haven't been completely disillusioned with the process, because if democracy is all we fucking have, then we have to fucking abide by it, right? We can't live as non-capitalists in a capitalist society. We can't live as whatever in a democratic society, that even if it's a failed democracy, we have to do it. Otherwise, like, even if I feel hopeless, I'm still going to try and do it, because otherwise the people who are the thing that will motivate me to vote more than anything is so that I can at least balance out the people who are stupidly voting without doing research, or people who are just plain racist. Like, going into these comment fucking sections of these YouTube channels that I've been watching is horrific, because it's just like white people mostly being awfully racist, okay? And it's like, at this point in time, what the fuck are you doing?
And they will 100% be at the polls,
because they're the ones commenting DA all the way, DA all the way. As far as comments go, I'm telling you, KwaZulu-Natal comment section, EFF. Like, EFF's got that according to the comments. And then the other two, I'm not sure. It's pretty mixed. But NCC for sure, Cape Town in the comments. Joburg, don't know. But yeah, just like, especially the KwaZulu-Natal one, they were just like white people comments that were just like, shut up.
Wild. Yeah, I mean, you know, you speak about capitalism, and like, I think the best that we can do with the little power that we have is to select people in positions of power who can help to start moving the needle on how the system works in general.
Yeah, we just have to do something, because unfortunately, if we decide to do nothing, the bad people, and I'm just going to call them the bad people because they're still going to do something. And I just want everyone to remember that the fucking Vryheidsfront plus what they're like, the Reformed Freedom Front, are in the fucking multi-charter fucking thing. What it was originally called the Moonshot Pact. The Moonshot Pact, and then they changed the name.
Oh, shoot for the moon, and if you miss, at least you end up in the stars? Is that what?
I don't know, but originally last year when they met, it was called the Moonshot Pact, and the Vryheidsfront is in there with the fucking DA, the UIM, all of these fucking people. Just know who you're voting for, because these people are fucking Koppenians, and I'm telling you, it's gonna be bad. Do something. Read a fucking book. We're gonna post a link to a document. It's a lot of reading, but it's worth it. Go do it.
Yeah, we're going to put a few links, and, you know, even if you at least do one of those things, that would be cool. I will say, yes, I understand people who don't want to go vote, but just remember those very racist people who would definitely be at the polls. So just remember them, because last election, there were 9 million voters that were registered, or 9 million registered voters that did not vote in that election. That's a lot of people.
Insane.
And I mean, to be fair, there's also an element of, say, for example, there's a lot of people from the Eastern Cape who work in the Western Cape, and they won't have an opportunity midweek to go back to, I mean, you can change your address, but if maybe they haven't done that, whatever the story is. We mentioned this last time as well. This is the first election since 1994 that the ANC is expected to drop below its 50% hold or majority. I do think we can expect a coalition government. So yeah, we do need to be careful about which way that leans as well, which is why we kind of flagged the Action SA thing. And just another little tidbit, because we spoke about Zuma last time. He's kind of like, there's a whole thing around like whether he's allowed to be part of this or not, but basically it's like,
oh, MK.
Yeah, it's MK. So it's always, but I think they've kind of just like buried his image a little bit in there because of the controversy around it.
If you Google the main parties, there are multiple articles who put Zuma at the forefront of the MK party. So I don't know that they're hiding it that much.
Once you're in power, I know there are like constitutional things and laws and stuff like that, but like when you're the party in power, like we've seen so much leeway, people breaking the laws and not getting arrested, or literally people going to get arrested and like whole province just being like, you will not take this person. So, you know, when someone's in power, what they said they were going to do, like might not matter.
And KZN is his home province, so he probably will gain a lot of traction there. But he's also 81 years old, so, you know, which is the current age for most people
in politics,
in power.
Yeah, globally. You were talking about like I know we have the 3 main parties or whatever, but it's always been so wild to me. Like when you get your ballot paper here, it's like all these parties. You're like, who even are these people?
So many people.
But I think it does also speak to this thing of like this desperation for change, and like people who've tried to be part of big parties and have been like, I can't, I need to do this myself because you guys are just like faking it. But this is the highest number of political parties in the history of our democratic elections that will be vying for seats. So there's a lot of parties, and it's also the first time that independent candidates like have been permitted to now. Oh, one last thing that I did want to say is that this NHI bill, which is like national health insurance that has just been now signed in, like one thing I want to say is leading up to elections, there's literally people like polishing lampposts because it's an election year.
Yeah.
So the fact that has been signed in very conveniently now, yes, I believe in it. It should be a thing.
Yeah.
If the ANC, who is the ruling party now, and, you know, our president of the ANC, he signed it in, but I don't see anything happening there with them in power. Do I believe this should exist? 100%. But will it happen?
Yeah. No. Well, also, so what is it, NHI, right? Yeah, the NHI, the whole like bill has been around for a few years apparently, and the one that he just signed has not even been amended recently, and so like a lot of doctors and people are already like, oh, I'm leaving the country, like I am not fucking doing this, and like people are not happy about this happening.
It was a political gesture.
I don't think it's a smart move though, because people are unhappy. Like every single. Like, let me tell you one thing. If there's one thing I do is I troll a comment section, and every single comment section about that I've trolled and seen and looked at, there has not been one positive comment. There have been doctors saying, I'm a doctor and I'm quitting my job on Wednesday. Like, there have been people saying, like, this is just, well, obviously you get like the stupid people who go, I don't want my tax-paying money to pay for other people's health insurance, because people who don't pay taxes don't have to pay anything. They get health insurance or healthcare for free. Yeah, healthcare should be fucking free. If the system works, it should be free. We shouldn't pay for healthcare. We shouldn't pay for water.
And honestly, we should already have that. We have free healthcare. It just doesn't work. So what you're saying to me is that you're signing this thing, but you've been thieving the money from clinics and government hospitals and shit for years. So like what's changing? Nothing.
So like and the problem is everything is being pumped into the fucking private sector. Like the private sector in health insurance, it should not be as powerful as it is, because there should not be a thing of like, oh, if you don't have your medical aid card on you, we can't take you to the nearest hospital. Sorry, we have to take you to a hospital that you can actually go to. That is fucking insane. That is an insane thing to do. Can you imagine a paramedic having to make that call knowing that that person is going to die? That is insane.
You have to stabilize them, but then you have to move them. And I can also say that I know that healthcare is not cheap, but it's like 100,000 Rand to be in hospital, not including procedures, per night, 100,000 Rand just to be in a private hospital.
And then you don't even talk about like what the, like, I don't know if we've talked about this. I've been looking into like certain procedures, right, related to not necessarily health, whatever. And either your wait list is like years, like literally the wait list for this thing is 25 years. Or the amount that you pay for private eyes is like 500, 600,000 Rand for like a surgery. Like, what? What? Now he's doing this stupid thing, signing an unamended bill with people like behind him smiling so like broad and whatever, and everyone is fucking unhappy about it. I love the idea. Great job, bud. But you have to fucking fix the way our country works first and where all the money is going before you can sign something into fucking existence.
But that's the thing, is that those small steps are not what they want now to show clout or to say we're doing something for you, our constituents. And if you have, they've kept a lot of voters uneducated, not uneducated on how to vote, but in terms of who they vote for, then if I didn't know any better, I'd be like, oh, there's a change. Maybe I will be able to get decent healthcare now. Like it's like they're trying really hard to hold on because they know that people are done with it.
Right, and I'm not going to say that this is the whole reason, because I do hope that, like, part of me hopes that it was like motivated by what it should be motivated by. You know what I'm going to say? The ICJ, the ICJ thing.
You see, I don't see that as an ANC thing. For example, I see that like, and that's maybe me just being whatever, because obviously they are the majority party and they rule the country. They would have just been like no, but I'm like, oh, South Africa did that, but you know who's South Africa?
I like your way more. I like your way more. Mine is, I think maybe I'm just too cynical.
No, because I'm saying the exact same thing about the NHI.
I just feel like it was such a coincidence for them to like make such a big gesture in an election year.
Yeah.
And then obviously a lot of people are critical of it because they're like, oh, you want to go mingle in other countries' problems, but you can't even fix your own country. Which I don't think we shouldn't have done it. Obviously,
yes.
I'm fucking very proud of South Africa and I'm really happy that we did it because fuck Israel, fuck Netanyahu, fuck all those people. Yeah. But, you know, maybe also ICJ yourself because shit's bad here.
It's actually linked to what we were talking about earlier about systems, because they will tell you that it was legal grandstanding. Like, we can go to the ICJ, that is the system that's in place, and nothing's going to be done. So they'll be found guilty of these things, but who's going to enforce it? Like, it's not going to get done. But it doesn't mean, for example, like, just because democracy is not really democracy and whatever, just because the system is broken doesn't mean that you shouldn't still do something.
Because the ICJ has no, like, enforcement power, but we should still do it, you know?
So basically what I'm saying with that is go and vote.
Also, coalition-wise, on the panels, they asked the EFF about that, I think, and they were not clear. Like, they were not upfront about it. They were like, I don't think they denied anything outright, but they did not say who they're gonna, like, end up siding with.
And I think it's because they would take a power grab if they could.
I think so. And I just Googled it a minute ago, and it's one of the headlines was like saying how it looks like the DA and the EFF are leaning closer together, which would be an insane thing because that means it would be the DA plus the fucking multi-charter parties and then the EFF also, which doesn't make sense because none of the EFF's principles align with the DA's principles. Even if you just look at like the principles of like Israel-Palestine, EFF is strongly like the EFF are the people, the EFF were the ones who like started the thing of like removing the diplomats from Israel, and the DA like fully absolutely supports a ceasefire and doesn't want anyone on either side to get hurt, but also they're Zionists. So
but what I wanted to say now is like this guy in Australia, what he was trying to put his money towards was like center left and center right parties, and I would imagine that like the DA kind of sees themselves as like center left. And then the EFF is obviously like far, like, I'm sorry, everyone who voted for anyone who then becomes like part of that is going to be like, this is not what I voted for. It's like an affront.
It would be an affront. I would be so mad if I decided to vote for the EFF, which I'm not going to do. But if I did decide to vote for them, I would be so mad if they ended up fucking going off with the DA and like the dish ran away with the spoon.
We have to relinquish power because there, once your vote is in, that's where the broken system and things that happen thereafter are out of our control. So I'm actually just gonna like lean as far away as I can from ANC, EFF, DA, like.
Yeah, I'm actually fully going to go like probably like Rise Mzansi or like one of the smaller parties. And you know what? I think that even if we get a few tiny seats of different parties in like Congress or whatever the fuck you want to call it, I don't think that's what we call it in South Africa, whatever.
National Assembly and Parliament.
Just get the seats. Yeah, thank you. I've been watching too much like American fucking politics. Yeah. But if you want to just get at least a few people to like have a little bit of a voice, you know, and then you start building every time and you make it a little bit bigger and you see what they accomplish instead of like leaving it in the hands of these people.
And they get some taxpayer money into their campaign.
Hell yeah. We don't have to deal with these like big ass fucking parties who think they can get away with anything. They need to be fucking checked.
Yeah, I think for me right now, it's like Rise Mzansi for national and then probably having a look at MCC for maybe the two other ballads.
Yeah, I think NCC, NCC for sure. And then maybe AM4C. I would recommend NCC and AM4C. Go look at them. Really good. That's the only really good ones I can think of, to be honest. Because where the fuck is Cope?
No idea. No idea. And Good. Also, no idea.
I don't think Cope was even at the panels, if I'm remembering correctly. Good was. And Good, the guy who spoke at Cape Town from Good was really good. I think it was him. Yeah, he was pretty cool. And really critical of the DA as well, which was very interesting to see. Like, really good to see. But I haven't, read up on them enough to... Like, they weren't as impactful as the other two parties, in my opinion. Yeah.
Thank you. You've given me a lot to think about.
Yeah, ditto. I didn't know so many things.
And I still don't know so many things.
Hopefully, like, we've just, like, managed to narrow some things down for you. Honestly, don't vote for the lesser evil. Vote for the party you actually want to vote for. Like, we're done voting for the lesser evil.
Yes, and like I know this kind of sounds like voting for the lesser evil, but like don't let perfection like get in the way of like something that could be like good or better. It doesn't have to be perfect. So if there's a party that you like, yes, there's just this one little thing, not as in like we support Israel, like a little thing, like then just still go to the polls and vote for the thing that could be better, even if it's not perfect, because nothing's perfect and no candidate's perfect and no party's perfect and politics is never going to be perfect.
No, I will also just add as a final Rise Mzansi thing, they seem pretty young.
Mm-hmm. And I saw them talking to a lot of youth as well. Like they were very interested in speaking with youth.
If I remember correctly, the premier candidate for Cape Town for Rise was like, he's like 35. Which is like a year older than some people.
I don't have feelings about someone being that far along in their career at that age.
No, I'm not insecure about that at all. I'm definitely not feeling worried. But it's just nice to know that like the youth will be, well, the youth, you know, comparatively will be represented.
Well, 80, 35, that's youth.
I'm so tired of being represented by like old fuckers who don't know what's going on and can't operate a cell phone. I'm sorry. And also in the Cape Town panel discussion, someone fell off their chair, so watch that. It's funny. If you want to know who it was,
that was a great punt.
It was Neil de Beer of the UIM. So enjoy that. Oh no, it wasn't him. It was the guy sitting next to him.
Instead of watching series this evening, go and watch that because it sounds amazing.
Honestly, I think it's an hour and a half to 2 hours, and it's just so good. It's so fucking necessary. I wish they did more things like that because it is. I wish we did. Do we do debates? Like the US, they do like full debates. Why did we do that?
I'm shaking my head like I know this for a fact, but I don't.
I can't imagine our politicians debating.
I mean, in Parliament, like they obviously like Parliament's unhinged. Like if they're discussing something, it's never just a discussion. It's like unhinged, and that's everywhere in the world. But I think that's as close as it comes, and it's not like a public thing. Like I think it's televised or you know whatever. You can go find out about it. But it's not like you know debating a certain topic or whatever.
But like, you know how in the US, they always have debates before like the elections. I feel like that's something that every country should have because then you can really see not only what your presidential candidate thinks and what they believe, but you can see how they function in a situation where they're under pressure and quickly have to respond to questions that are important because that's when their real beliefs come out because you can only prepare so much. But it might also be...
Well, I feel like this is maybe something like that, but because we have so many political parties, like they should be doing more of it, and it should be like only the premier candidates, only the presidential candidates, like all these different, variations of this.
Might also be like, it could be unfair because we have so many languages and it will be in English and it might not be someone's first language to debate in.
I mean, translators, give people a job. Like, hello.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. Yeah. In the KZN one today, a lady asked a question I am not exactly sure, but I'm gonna guess that it was Zulu. I'm not sure. And then the people responded, even like the DA white representative responded to her fluently, not in English, in Zulu, which I was like, yo, props
Good.
to you, man.
Yeah, should be a prerequisite, but yeah, nice.
Yeah, I should know what that language was.
Well, I mean, yeah, but if you're gonna run a country, like, you need to be in touch with your constituents. Anyway,
Well,
thank you.
Thank you, and thank you guys for listening.
Yes.
Hopefully, we know this is probably going to be not that far from the election, but, please try and read something and go out and vote and then go have a beer afterwards.
But Ryette and I will take a break from politics. I mean, everything's political, but we'll take a break and we'll just go back to talking some regular existential shit for a little while, which will be cool.
You'll see my different hairstyles.
But obviously, as you can tell, we're very invested in this election. And yeah, we hope you are too.
Go vote.
Bye, girl.
Bye.